Hey YouTube, it's been a while again, but I'm back, and today I wanted to make a body serum. I was running out of my regular body lotion. I wanted to make something a little bit more powerful, if you will, and also something a little lighter too. I tend to like really heavy sort of lotions, but I wanted to try something different and create a body serum. And what that is essentially, it's like a moisturizer and a lotion, but it's very light like a serum, and it does have active skincare ingredients in it like a serum. I just make it in appropriate proportions, recipe-wise, for the body instead of the face. Like for example, I added a lot of fragrance because I like a lot of fragrance in my body products. You could apply this to your face, no problem, especially if you don't have sensitivities. You could even add this much fragrance and put it on your face, but I specifically formulated it for the body, something that's just going to really smooth and hydrate the skin, make it have a nice glow to it, nice and exfoliated as well, but also a really nice fragrance. So that's what I did. I did not, well, turns out this is a concept that exists already. I thought maybe I could reverse engineer a recipe that I had seen, or a product that I had seen that some other companies are selling body serums, but nothing really wowed me when I was like searching Sephora. So I thought I'm just gonna make something up completely from the top of my head. That's my favorite thing to do anyways. So I just made up this recipe myself, and we're gonna make it together. I will say also in this video I'm going to be talking about hydrophilic-lipophilic balance, which is essentially a code that's going to help you to choose the correct emulsifiers for your emulsified products. So let's jump into it. So here's what Wikipedia has to say about hydrophilic-lipophilic balance.
Now, I would personally describe the hydrophilic-lipophilic balance as a special code that lets you know how much emulsifier or what type of emulsifier at what usage rate you need to use to perfectly emulsify the mixture of emollients and oils going to use as well. And this does include emollients like petroleum-based things, silicones, and that as well, not just natural oils. I'm using natural oils and some squalane. It is olive-derived, but it seems to behave a little bit more like a silicone. But anyways, I'm using that. My grapeseed oil has an HLB of 7. And what I'm going to do to get the average, to figure out the exact HLB number I need to look for my emulsifiers, is I'm going to do a little equation to get the average. This has an HLB of 7, and I'm using it as 75% of the oils I'm using are going to be this grapeseed oil. So for that, I do 7 times 0.75. That's 5.25, okay. I do the same thing for the shea butter. I only used a small amount of shea butter, 5%. Whoops. So that's 8 times 0.05, that's 0.4. Squalane, if you can figure it out, I did 20% of that, so that's times 0.2. 2.4. And then what we're going to do is add these numbers together, and that's the HLB code, essentially, the number that we need these to average out to as well, to make sure that without any guessing, well, there's a little bit of guessing, but if the numbers match up here, you should pretty much be certain that your recipe that you're coming up with is going to be emulsified, as long as you don't have any weird additives in it. So this number here, 8.05, that's the magic number that we want with these. Similar thing with these emulsifiers. Now, these high number emulsifiers, this has an HLB of 13, and as you can see, that's much more than these two here. This cream maker ANIO, it's made for anionic mixtures, and that's anionic, cationic, and that's a whole nother story and a whole nother video, and I'm not prepared to get into that now, so we're just gonna call it what it is. We're not gonna worry about the ionic nature of this recipe at this point. Anyways, this does have an HLB of 13, and in this recipe I used it at 40.62%. So I actually multiply it by 0.4062. That's a weird percentage, but for the recipe itself, the physical weight made sense. So I kept that as even number instead of making the percentage an even number, because it doesn't really matter as long as the recipe works for me. So multiply that. That's 5.28. For this one, the sorbitan oleate, I did about 28.12%, so we're going to do 0.2812. Whoops, helps if I type the right thing in. That is not correct. 4.3 times 0.2812 is 1.2009. Put that 09 in there because that's going to round things up. And this one, the polyglycerol oleate, I did this one at 31.25%, so 0.3125 roughly. That all adds up to 100% at the end of the day. That number is 1.5625. Add these up really quick here. 0.28. Would you look at that? 8.05. That's exactly what we need. So this ratio of these particular emulsifiers with this ratio of these particular oils, it's going to match up. It's going to emulsify, hopefully. So let's give the recipe a shot.
So I'm starting here with my liquid portion, my water portion of the recipe. I love aloe vera juice in place of distilled water, so I'm starting with that. I've also added some super low molecular weight hyaluronic acid that's dissolved into my aloe. That just means you can add a lot more to it and it's not going to gel up. And I'm also adding to this all of my liquid extracts and my more water-based, the lower HLB emulsifiers. They're still kind of greasy, and you notice it doesn't seamlessly blend in, but I am just using my stick blender to incorporate those. It says, you know, right on the packaging and right on the description of those emulsifiers that they're somewhat miscible in water. So I mix them in with the water portion of my recipe. Now I'm adding my oils and that last emulsifier that is the higher HLB, more fat-based. That was thicker. I had to heat it up a little bit to melt it. I also had to melt the shea butter, but I'm really emulsifying this at a low temperature. It's practically room temperature, maybe about 85 degrees. The nice thing about some of these emulsifiers is they are cold friendly. You don't have to have like a 130-degree mixture for it to blend together. So I wanted to keep this very low temperature. That's exactly what I did. I heated up the oils, the shea butter, and the cream maker emulsifier just enough to really liquefy them. But I'm adding everything else is room temperature, and you can see it emulsifies beautifully. That is the bonus and the plus side to, you know, figuring out the HLB numbers for both the oils that you're using and the emulsifiers that you're using, is you know that it's going to emulsify. Like I had said before, unless you're using a really strange additive, something with like a really low or a really high pH maybe, maybe something alcohol based, you know, it's really going to mix up for you. So you shouldn't have anything to worry about as long as you do the math. Because this is cool, I'm now mixing in my preservative. I'm using Optifin and also my fragrance. stopped recording there, so I started it up again, and now it flipped. It flipped it upside down, so sorry about that. I'm just blending the fragrance and the preservative into the final mixture here. It is very fluid and very light, as you can see. I let it sit for a while. I knew it really wasn't going to thicken up too much, but I wanted to sit to make sure it did stay emulsified, and I was correct. Nothing had separated out, but I did want to thicken this up a little bit. I'm using polyhydroxy acid, which is from castor oil. It's a thick orangey wax, as you can see. I wanted to thicken this up the itty bitty tiniest little bit. I'm using just over 3% of this polyhydroxy acid. I didn't want it to be even lotion texture. I just wanted it to be a little bit less runny. So that's what I did. And now I'm sort of tempering it in to my serum base here. I did melt down the polyhydroxy acid. Even adding my room temperature serum to it did cool it down and solidify it enough. But what I'm doing is tempering it in. If you've ever made a custard with eggs, you know you don't want scrambled eggs in the middle of your pudding, so you'll have your scrambled egg and sugar mixture, and then you're going to add your hot cream and milk and everything slowly to those eggs. Stir it in so it's going to cook slowly and it's not going to cook fast, and scramble it. I didn't want to overheat my serum. I wanted to keep it cool. So what I did was I had my hot polyhydroxy acid. I added a little itty bit of serum to that, and I was going to emulsify that in a small amount before adding it all to the larger batch. I did need to heat it up in the microwave just 11 seconds longer. It was just 11 seconds, maybe 12. So I just microwaved that again for just a little bit to heat it up a little bit more. So I didn't have any chunks, and it was fully melted and mixed in. I'm stirring it around here to make sure that it was liquefied again, which it was. And then I'm going to stick blend and temper in that small batch there before I add the entire bit to the full batch. I didn't want to heat up my whole mixture, because as you can remember, I already added the preservative to it. You don't heat that up. And again, it wasn't a hot recipe. It's not something that I got particularly hot to begin with, so I didn't want to heat the whole darn thing up. Once I blended that, I really blended the heck out of it. Excuse me. And once I knew that that was fully emulsified in, I went ahead, and you'll see here in just a moment, I'm going to add my tempered extra emulsified serum to my master base serum, the whole big batch there off to the side. Just making sure I don't have any chunks floating at the bottom. I did not. Perfectly melted, perfectly emulsified in. I'm gonna just add my tempered mixture and fully incorporate that into the full batch. If you ever need to add extra emulsifier later on, I recommend that you do temper it in a small portion off to the side before you add it to your full batch. You don't really want to have to heat up the whole thing over again necessarily. I mean, not if you can help it. I did get some frothiness all of the occasions that I was blending this up. I didn't have a very large amount in this big glass bowl here, so there's a lot of bubbles happening with the stick blender in particular. If you have a larger batch or a smaller mixing container, it shouldn't be so bubbly, but that's not a huge deal, at least not to me in the very end, so wasn't too concerned about it. I did end up taking the temperature of this after I stopped recording. It still wasn't very hot. It was 82 degrees. So still a little bit above room temperature, but not hot. I mean, when you consider making lotions or serums, generally they do get a little hotter than that. But as you can see, it's still very fluid and very light. The difference that I achieved by adding that polyhydroxysteric acid to the recipe was very minor. Again, I wanted it serum texture and not lotion texture, but it's got so many rich ingredients in it, you're still going to get hydration from it. Now I had some things to do, so I went, I covered this up and let it sit to fully get to room temperature. And then I came back to it. I was going to bottle it up. Very light texture. It didn't thicken up. I didn't want it to be thicker than this though, so I'm actually quite pleased with the difference that I made by adding that little extra bit. Now we're talking about HLBs here. I did not factor in the hydrophilic-lipophilic balance number of that polyhydroxysteric acid into this. I thought it's already emulsified. I just want to thicken it. I'm not even going to alter the math. There's no point at that point. But had I anticipated using that to begin with, I may have changed my proportions just a little bit. In this case, it didn't really matter. Sometimes it's not going to matter. You can just use any old emulsifier and you're basically fine. But if you're using a more complicated sort of formulation, it's good to calculate that out. I didn't weigh these because they're just for myself, but you can tell it's a little bit denser. Those are 4-ounce containers. And you can tell that this must weigh a little bit over 4 ounces because I didn't quite get a full 4th bottle. And I used a little bit over 16 ounces of ingredients altogether. But I'm really happy with the way this turned out. And I can't wait to use it after my showers. So this is what I ended up with, almost 4 full bottles of this, and this is my body serum. I'm happy with the way it turned out. I think it's got a great texture, great fragrance, and hopefully I start to notice a difference in my skin in the next few days. It does have a lot of good stuff in it, as you saw. I apologize, I'm already losing my natural lighting. It's getting really dark. Kind of stormy looking here. It's only like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but it's fall, so what are you gonna do? Did want to show you the texture though. You can see it's kind of running around. It's very liquidy. I could have thickened this more. Really didn't want to though. I want it to be light. It feels very rich though, because I do have some oils in there, and it's emulsified nicely. So that's essentially it, guys. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you thought of this video, if you're interested in a body serum at all. And let me know if you make one for yourself. Thanks.